nothing in these charts and textbooks really covers when you use currencies like as a weapon. And that's what we're seeing happen now. The people in, as I said, Russia, Iran, and China are saying the way we're going to stop America from invading Iran is we're going to smoke the U.S. dollar. We're going to take it down. We're going to crush the U.S. dollar, and we're going to force the U.S. to go into a major economic tailspin as a way to engage in economic warfare. That's the way World War III is going to be fought. Now, for y'all, as I've been saying, gold bullion is a place to be. The dollar is, at the very least, it's going to be extremely volatile. You're just going to start to see 10, 20% moves every, it can be compressed into very short periods of time, and that's going to be very scary for people. But again, if you're defensive and you got some gold bullion, gold or silver bullion, you're going to have that's the place to be during this period of extreme volatility. And that the story is not different. The only thing different is that the timeline is being compressed, and things are happening a lot. Things are happening now. We're not talking about a concept that might happen in a few years. We're saying right now there are people. Look at what's happened in the last 2 weeks. You had a G20 meeting, a G7 meeting, International Monetary Fund was meeting, the UN was meeting, and they're all talking about the same thing: what to do about the dollar. All these guys, while the kids in America are sitting playing with their hula hoops and the latest video games, their parents, being the IMF, the World Bank, and the G7, are in the kitchen, sitting around the kitchen table, deciding what to do with these kids in America and their dollar and their currency. So the kids are going to wake up one day and find out that, oops, mommy and daddy decided to devalue the dollar by 50%. Oh, I guess that means everything is going to cost twice as much, and I guess we're now in the third world. Oh, okay. But they're making those decisions right now. And it's tragic that the mainstream media in America is not telling the people in America what is being discussed at G7, G4, G20 right now. They're deciding America's future right now in the back rooms of these meetings right now. And obviously, with China, Iran, and Russia, they're not being coy about it. They're coming out there and they're saying, you know what? We're sick of you market manipulating folks in the U.S., and now, guns are drawn. We're going to start attacking this dollar, and we're going to start buying up gold aggressively. And Germany's caught in the middle, and they're saying, oh, my God, we've got like 3,000 tons of our gold in New York. We want it back. When Germany makes that announcement, gold's going to go to, it's going to have a huge move.
By the way, let me just add this. CNBC is now predicting $2,000 an ounce gold, saying their charts show that. That's up on prisonplanet.com, one of the top stories. And you've got a fraction of the public waking up that gold is important and that actually has intrinsic value and can't be devalued completely. And it's probably only going to go up and is going up right now. What is going to happen when the yuppies decide gold is cool? How high could it go?
Well, that's what I was talking to at the top of the show. If, in fact, the powers that be on Wall Street, Goldman Sachs and J.P. Morgan, if they figure out that the easiest bubble to try to inflate, to pay themselves huge Christmas bonuses this year or next year, if they decide it's gold, then it could go. Really, as we used to say in Wall Street, there is no top.
So it could be like Google stock going from $20 to $500.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I was working on Wall Street, and I worked on Wall Street in one capacity or another during the boom of the 80s, during the dot-com of the 90s. And, you had in the 90s the dot-com stocks that would go public at 16 and trade to 300. And then they returned back to, 16 again. But so gold could be, if they decide that gold's been in a bear market up until just the past few years. During the entire bull market on Wall Street that started in 1982, gold just went down every single year because nobody wanted it, and it was being trashed by all the central banks who were selling gold to buy T-bills to use as collateral to create collateralized debt obligations and credit default swaps and this huge Ponzi scheme that became the U.S. and global market that hit the skids in the summer of 2007 when Chuck Prince, CEO of Citigroup, said, as long as the music's playing, we're going to keep dancing. And then that week, the BNP came out of the report saying our hedge funds have a lot of junk bonds in there, and we don't think the value is 100 cents on the dollar. We think it's 0 cents on the dollar, and that was the beginning of what we now know as the financial crisis that we're all suffering from today. Now, there was an attempt back in the latter part of last year to inject 12 or 13 trillion dollars worth of new loans into the economy, and you're seeing the stock market bounce. And you're seeing some quote-unquote green shoots. But now that all these stimulus packages have ended, the clunkers, cash for clunkers, et cetera, now we're going back to reality. When the reality is that all that Obama and these guys did was just layer another few $trillion worth of debt on top of the debt layer cake, and the whole thing is just, it didn't stop it from collapsing, and we're right back to where we were last year and the year before. By the end, within 6 months, there's going to be banks going to Congress saying, if you don't give us another $5 trillion, we're going to do a suicide mission. We're going to blow ourselves up, which is what Paulson did, if you remember. He said, give us $700 billion. We're going to blow up this entire economy. He was like one of these suicide bombers in front of Congress, and he strapped on like $5 trillion worth of derivative contracts that he was going to explode in everyone's face. And now, that's going to come again. So, the point being that the rest of the world is saying, hold on, we've seen this movie before. We don't want to play this game anymore. We've got the oil. You don't have the oil. Plus, a lot of these countries are dealing with the fact, I don't know if you follow this or not, Alex, but, I think it may go against some of your orthodoxy, but the fact is, in countries like Mexico, which is one of the 3 biggest oil fields in the world, Cantarell, their production is nosediving. It's down sharply. And these big fields around the world, I know we may have a slight conflict in our thoughts on this, but these big oil fields around the world, their production numbers are diminishing.
Well, you're certainly right. You're certainly right. There's 6.5 going on 7 billion people, and you're going to have fights over fewer and fewer resources. There is a lot of oil and stuff, but it's still a big job to find it and get it out. And you're absolutely right. There's pressure everywhere. Max, I'm going to come back and play the new trailer because I know you've got to go. But before we end, you were telling me you've got a new project. First time I heard of this at your PirateMyFilm.com website.
Oh, yeah. Well, Pirate My Film, my website is anybody can list a movie and try to raise money for their movie. And I've got a few movies listed. I've got a movie called Where's Kenny Boy? I'm going to try to go down to Paraguay and find Ken Lay, because I think he's still alive and living down in Paraguay. I also have a movie called Baltimore Jihad. It's about who made the most money with options on 9/11. And I got a story going down to Baltimore, Maryland, and talking to the bankers who made all the money on 9/11 trading options. So that's a project called Baltimore Jihad. Then I've got a new project called Alex in Wonderland. And it's a fantasy project. It's about the mainstream media in America suddenly adopts Alex Jones as their mainstream media outlet. And what would happen if suddenly, mainstream media started to take on what you've been saying now for 14 years and adopting it as the main message? It's like, what gave me the big idea was the Hardin, Montana story, because to me that is the first major story to leap from Alex Jones to mainstream, and not the first, but I'm saying it's a huge story that went from Alex Jones InfoWars to mainstream media in a huge way. And so this is a little project I'm putting together, and it's about how mainstream media goes Alex Jones.
Well, I'm honored, and I think that'll make a good film, but I think the Where's Kenny Boy will be even more interesting because no doubt they staged that death. Max, that is exciting. As that develops, we will have you back on, maxkeiser.com.